Good morning. Thank you all for joining us on the August edition of Ask Me Anything with Treasurer Folwell. Obviously, we have quite a bit to talk about today. Thank you all for joining us. I will go ahead and let the Treasurer do his opening statement.
Good morning. Thank you all for joining.
Excuse me, Treasurer. Please mute your phones. Thank you.
We have a lot to talk about today, and we're going to get right to your questions. Just the latest news about the pension plan. We got some preliminary numbers that show that the fiscal year ended returns for the pension plan are around 6.6%. That is a very rough estimate. The pension plan with those fiscal year numbers is now on its 21st year on average of not hitting the assumed rate of return of 7%. And all of you on the call know that the only way that the fundedness of the pension plan grows is if we hit the assumed rate of return. And so we were on board in leading up to the fourth quarter of last year to do extremely well with that. But as you know, the fourth quarter, everybody had a decline in their portfolio. So we got a lot going on with healthcare. Yesterday, we had reopened the window on the clear pricing project. That window is now closed. We don't have a lot to report about new sign-ups, but I'll be glad to, as we always have done every month since I've been the keeper of the public purse, answer any question you might have. So with that, we'll go ahead and start.
Thank you, Treasurer. Who would like to ask the first question, please?
We must do something. And that's exactly what we are going to do.
Hello? Taft, do you have a question?
Go ahead and go to the next one. Go to the next one.
Hello? Could somebody please mute the phone? Taft, are you there?
Let's go to the next one.
Does anyone have a question?
What's the latest for the state health plan?
I'm sorry, who's speaking?
Jason Stujanki, Channel 9, Charlotte. Just the latest on the state health plan after midnight last night.
Thank you, Jason, for calling in. It was good to see you last week. We have no news to report. I will say, generally speaking, nothing has changed regarding the boycott of the state health plan by the hospital systems across North Carolina. We may have had a couple sign up when we reopened the contract period, but we're waiting to get that information from our third-party administrator over the next 48 hours. So stay tuned for that, but we did not hear from a great number of hospitals who had an interest in serving the state employees at on average, 100% profit over the Medicare reimbursement rates.
We're talking about Atrium and Novant are concerned. I assume those two no change in their behavior.
No change in their behavior, and once again, as I've used the word before, they've chosen to boycott the people that teach and protect and serve us as citizens of North Carolina, and their unwillingness to accept, on average, almost 100% profit over the Medicare reimbursement rates is nothing's changed along those lines.
Will you extend the deadline?
We're not extending the deadline at this time. We have a loyalty and duty of care to our participants, to our members. We are completely member focused at the state health plan, and we have a loyalty and duty of care to our members to make sure that we have accessible, affordable health care, and we're pleased that we have built a network that has 27,000 providers in it. We've had less than about a handful of hospitals who have signed on to the Clear Pricing Project, but as I've said before, we continue to be boycotted.
Got it, thanks.
Thanks, Jason. Who has the next question?
Hey, it's Seth with the Triangle Business Journal.
Go ahead, Seth.
Hey, so I just had a question and a follow-up. Regarding the meeting yesterday, has there been other meetings? Obviously, yesterday was with UNC. Has there been other meetings with any of the other major hospital systems?
Well, thank you for your question, Seth. We have, to look in the rearview mirror for a moment, we have answered every email, we've answered every telephone call, and we have attended every meeting that has been requested of us in any way, shape, or form from any of these large providers since the Clear Pricing Project was launched last fall. The meeting that you referred to yesterday, and you've seen the statement by UNC Healthcare, we are obviously beyond disappointed that the state hospital, who employs the greatest number of state employees as an agency, as a healthcare provider, has chosen not to accept a reimbursement rate that produces almost 100% profit in their case. And we're back to where we've always been, Seth, and that is that this is a battle between people who want to keep contracts secret and want to keep prices high versus the Clear Pricing Project, which is to have no more secret contracts, push the power down to the consumer, and actually lower health care costs.
Yeah, absolutely. Regarding that meeting, if you can speak to it, what's kind of the battle actually happening in those meetings? Are they negotiating over a reimbursement rate, or are they just trying to dissuade you from, say, going forward with the project? What's actually the negotiation? It's
a complete dissuasion from going forward, and that's why I put it in the context that I did just a few moments ago. There continues to be talk about value-based medicine, and let me just be clear with everybody on the phone. We were presented by the people that have the most access to our data. They have more access than we do with what the, quote, value and the savings of value-based medicine would mean for the state employees. And the fact is that generally speaking, and the jury's still out, that the fact is that value-based medicine only slows down the growth of increase in healthcare cost. Our goal with Clear Pricing is no more secret contracts, give the power to the consumer, and lower healthcare costs. We are diametrically opposed along those lines. To the second part of your question, Seth, we have never, I repeat, never received a counteroffer from the Hospital Association, which controls all these hospitals, generally speaking. We've never received a counteroffer. Every increase that we have put forth in terms of a reimbursement rate has come from us, and none of it has been in response to any counteroffer we've received. The Hospital Association, and they go on the record with this, has said that they would never agree to reference-based pricing, which means they would never agree to do away with secret contracts at any reimbursement rate. But it's our loyalty and duty of care to our members to give everything that we have and then some to build the network that we think is necessary. And
yeah, absolutely. Not to take up too much time, just to make sure I understand one reimbursement rate here. You said average 100% profit. That was something I heard from the first time in your statement last night. What does that mean?
What that means is that some providers are getting 215% of Medicare reimbursement rates. Some are getting higher than 215%. But on average, when you put all the providers in the system, on average, we're paying 197% of Medicare reimbursement rates. And most people consider, and that's a moving target, Medicare reimbursement rates to be cost or something at a slight profit.
I see. Well, thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thank you, Seth. Who has the next question for Treasurer Folwell?
Hannah Smith with the Observer here.
Go ahead.
Hey, so I just wanted to ask, what's going to be the next step in this? For a lot of Charlotte state employees, especially without Atrium and Novant signing on, they're kind of left in the lurch without a hospital system to go to. What's the next step?
Well, thank you for your question. Glad to have you on the call. Stay tuned for next steps, but I can tell you that that having access, nobody is denied access to these hospitals. Obviously, we are dealing with a situation where when we're boycotted after we have put forth reasonable offers, then we have to consider what steps to take next. But the number one step is to acknowledge and recognize the 27,000 providers who got the assignment, understood the assignment, and actually signed and did their homework and signed on to Clear Pricing. And this is not just about what's going on in Charlotte. It's going on all over the country and all over the United States. As I've read to many of you in the past, In order to make fully informed decisions about the health care, patients must know the price and quality of a good or service in advance of its purchase. With the predominant role that third-party payers and government programs play in the American healthcare system, however, patients often lack both access to useful price and quality information and the incentives to find low-cost, high-quality healthcare. Opaque pricing structures. And for those of you who haven't seen this, this is my picture of the color of opaque. This is a completely redacted price list that one of the major providers sent us when we asked them what we were supposed to pay. Opaque pricing structures may benefit powerful special interest groups. Obviously, we're dealing with this, such as large hospital systems and insurance companies, but they generally leave patients and taxpayers worse off than they would with a more transparent system. So, as I said earlier, at the latest offer that we've made, we have been boycotted by the two facilities that you have mentioned. They have shown no interest. We've never received a counteroffer from them. And so the decision has been with them for a matter of weeks whether to provide health care to people who teach, people who protect, and people who serve our citizens of this state. We have a hospital that I want to mention that's a little bit west of Charlotte called Caramount, and you're very familiar with them. And I'll never forget the call that I received from that CEO, who I've never met in person or have ever talked to on the phone. That particular facility under the Clear Pricing Project was going to lose a little money in relation to what they're currently getting for that same level of service. And that gentleman, the CEO, Chris, called me and said, listen, we have over 8,000 public service employees in our community. We're a community hospital. We respect what they do on our behalf, and we think this is the right decision on behalf of not only our hospital but our community. Those are the types of people that we partner with, not takers, but actually givers and creators who are trying to actually solve the problem of secret contracts and higher health care costs on state employees.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I've spoken with a couple of state employees, especially teachers in the area, who have said, part of shopping around and comparing costs is going to be discussing with spouses on which employee health plan is better to get on. But some of these people are married to other state employees, two teachers that are married. Is that sort of a part of shopping around, is thinking about which spouse's plan to get on? And then in that case, what's the choice for these people who are married to other state employees?
Well, great question. Let me clarify something that really hasn't come out much in the press. And I don't presume to know the age of the person that you're interviewing, but we need to be very clear about something. If you're over the age of 65 and you're on these plans, and if you're on the United Healthcare Medicare Advantage program, and that's nearly 145,000 people, this does not impact you at all. If you're over 65, you're part of the 90% of the people who are over 65 on the Medicare Advantage program. The Clear Pricing Project doesn't impact you at all. That's a contract that we have set up with United Healthcare per member per month, and that contract is not affected by Clear Pricing. Now, going back to somebody who's retired but not yet 65, or somebody who is an active employee, as I've said before, we have a responsibility to build out this network. But these individuals that you mentioned should be outraged at the fact that we have offered on their behalf nearly 100% profit on average to these institutions, and we continue to be boycotted. They should also be outraged at the fact of what's been happening to their health care costs, what's been happening to their family premiums. Family premiums in the state health plan have nearly doubled in the last 10 years. Their salaries haven't doubled in 10 years, but the cost of health care has doubled in the last 10 years. In addition to that, whether it's Mecklenburg County or any other county in North Carolina, an entry-level state employee this year has to work 1 week out of every 4 to pay the family premium. That's where the outrage should be. The outrage should be is that this plan has been spending nearly $3 billion not million, nearly $3 billion per year in healthcare and pharmaceutical benefits. And not only the current state auditor, Beth Wood, but the previous state auditor said over 7 years ago, the plan is at risk for overpaying. It doesn't matter if you're the treasurer or you're a taxpayer. Nobody should like that sentence so far. The plan is at risk for overpaying medical claims because even though the plan spends billions of dollars a year for healthcare and pharmaceutical services, the plan auditors do not have access to the vendor contracts and cannot verify that the state is receiving the proper contractual discount. That's where the outrage should be.
Do you have anything else?
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Someone else have a question for the treasurer?
This is Lisa Worf with WFAE in Charlotte.
Hey, Lisa.
At this point, how many hospital systems have joined on?
There have been about 5, Lisa, thank you for joining us, about 5 hospitals and 27,000 providers of health care across the state, across all the specialties and across all the different providers of health care in terms of what the service they provide. The largest provider of health care, the largest independent practice in Charlotte or possibly in North Carolina, Trine Medical, has signed on to the Clear Pricing Project. As far east, East Carolina University Physicians has signed on. So 27,000 providers who have said, yes, we no longer want to be a part of secret contracts. We want to compete. We want to be able to give the power to the consumer. And we're willing to tell people up front what something should cost. That's what we're going to be building on. I'll also say, in reference to your question, is that if you, and we're getting ready to do a deep dive into this, there are tens of thousands of doctors who cannot sign on the Clear Pricing Project because they have been purchased by a large hospital organization. The quote I just read a while ago, I didn't make an attribution and I apologize. That's the executive order signed by the President of the United States 7 weeks ago. Last week, through an administrative rule, it's reported that the President and his administration is going to require any hospital that receives any federal money from Medicare, Medicaid, or anything else, that there will be a necessity to actually produce these contracts going forward. And so this is really happening not just at the national level, but also at the local level. And
So what are the 5 hospitals then again?
Catawba Valley, Caramont, North Carolina Surgical Center, Randolph Medical, and Martin. I want to read to you, what we've been facing with the Clear Pricing Project is what I refer to as, cartel-like activities. The definition when you go to the Webster's Dictionary is an association of suppliers with the specific purpose of maintaining prices at a high level or restricting competition. That's what we're facing.
Lisa, do you got a follow-up?
Nope, that's it for now.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a question for Treasurer Folwell?
Hi there. This is Jason DeBruin, North Carolina Public Radio. I apologize for joining late. I'm going to ask a question that you've almost certainly already covered, and I apologize for that. But if you could just give some color from the meeting yesterday with yourself and the UNC, members of the board, just talk a little bit about what you took away from that meeting and your reaction to their statement.
Well, as I said earlier, Jason, before you got on the phone, that we were saddened that the state hospital owned by and paid for by the taxpayers of North Carolina that employs state employees who we have the responsibility for the state health plan for them has chosen not to accept reference-based pricing and a profit level that is approaching 100% over Medicare reimbursement rates.
What happens next? I mean, do you have to
have these hospitals signed on by the open enrollment deadline, or can this go until December 31st?
No, our deadlines are way before December 31st. As I said earlier in the call, we have a responsibility, a loyalty, and a duty of care to these members. Our focus is completely on the members to make sure they have accessible and affordable health care, which they have not been privileged to for a very long period of time. This plan should be taking advantage of its largeness. This plan should be able to provide health care services to those that teach, those that protect, and those that serve our citizens across North Carolina. They should be able to do that at the lowest possible prices. And this is the Clear Pricing Project and reference-based pricing, just to kind of recap what I've said in previous months. It's not the end of anything. The fact is that you can't value anything in your life unless you know what it costs. And you can't cut the cost of anything until you know what it costs. The number that we arrived at when we first started the Clear Pricing Project, which was a number that was given to us by the industry as the smallest amount of, the lowest number that we could use as far as how much inefficiency there is in the system. Unneeded tests, high administrative cost, fraud, unnecessary services, and there's about 2 other pillars. These are not my, this is not my information. This came from the United States Institute of Medicine. This is really happening. All of your readers, all of your viewers, and all of your listeners know that something is wrong in healthcare, and we have a medical arms race.
Could you please mute your phone? Thank you, Treasurer.
We have a medical arms race in North Carolina where no one in this state consumes health care. It consumes them. But after we've launched the Clear Pricing Project, we're hearing lots and lots of examples of people who are taking the power back into their hands as consumers. You know, none of you, or none of your listeners, none of your readers, and none of your viewers would go to Harris Teeter and shop if there were no prices on the aisle. And then when they get to the checkout, they're asked to pay for something, and then 5 months later they get an explanation of benefit that doesn't explain anything. That's what consumption is to know the value and the price of what you're getting. As I've said on this call before, we have a school teacher in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Before Thanksgiving was ordered to get an echocardiogram, I believe, an image. And when they got there, they presented their state health plan card, and they said that'll be $1,200 at this point in time. And the teacher was really set back and said, wow, how much is the total cost of this? And the lady happened to be a lady, could have been a guy. The lady genuinely said, we don't know the answer to that. We'd never been able, nobody knows how much things cost around here. This teacher took this negative experience and 7 days later drove 19 miles from their house and got an echocardiogram done for $210 total, instead of a $1,200 down payment towards something that nobody knew the cost of. This is what's really happening on the ground in North Carolina. And that's why nobody consumes health care in North Carolina. It's consuming them. And whether it's the Clear Pricing Project, the President's executive order on this issue, there's no turning back. People are no longer going to allow 20% of their income to go towards something that they don't understand.
Jason, you have any additional follow-up?
No, I appreciate that, and again, sorry for being a little bit late.
No problem. Thank you for joining us. We've had a few people ask some questions. Anybody else on the call that hadn't had a chance?
This is Travis with that.
Oh, go ahead, Travis.
I just wanted to see if you could name the 5 hospitals. Again, I didn't quite catch them. And then also, will you confirm that it was 126 hospitals that had signed on to the previous contract? I think I saw that number in the Winston-Salem Journal.
I would say to be clear, it's probably somewhere between 110 and 118. Obviously, there have been hospitals closed, which have nothing to do with the Clear Pricing Project since that number came out. But a great majority of those, Travis, as you know, are run by these mega conglomerates. For example, Carolina's medical system, which is the old Charlotte Memorial Hospital, we now know it as Atrium. The CEO of Atrium signs the paycheck of the CEO of Cone Health. Cone Health merged with Wesley Long, so now there's only one major hospital in the middle of in Guilford County. The CEO of Cone Health signs the paycheck of the CEO of Randolph Health. So you really need to follow and look at who controls the amount of hospital beds in this state, and I think you would be shocked at the results of that investigative report. Yeah.
Okay, can you name the five that have signed on this again, please?
I'm sorry. Martin, Randolph, Caramont, Catawba Valley, and North Carolina Surgical Center.
Thank you.
Thanks, Travis. Do you have any additional follow-up?
Nope, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. I think somebody else had a question.
Hi, this is Julie. Thanks so much. I was wondering, what is your stance on the hospital's alternative bill that they've been pushing that would essentially delay things for a year?
Ask the question again, Julie.
I've been talking to hospitals, and they've been talking a lot about sort of an alternative bill. It went through the House. It's currently sitting in the Senate rules about sort of just delaying everything for a year and sort of talking it over more. It would create the board. What is your stance on that, and why do you think they're pushing that?
They're pushing it because the Hospital Association wants it to be pushed. I have files and boxes full of, quote, studies of the last 15 years of where people have attempted to study this. And during that entire period of time, all that's happened is more secret contracts and higher costs for state employees and citizens in general. House Bill 184 is a piece of legislation that is meant to do one thing, and that is to maintain the status quo of secret contracts and to keep health care costs high. That's all House Bill 184 does.
All right.
Julie, you got a follow-up on that?
Yes, I do. What, just again, for the future of state employees, what is, you've been talking a little bit about the next step, but what is the most immediate, I guess, thing that you're going to do to try to get some of these hospitals on the contract?
Well, the most immediate thing is we'll continue to answer every phone call, attend every meeting, and answer any email that we receive from any of these hospitals, number one. The second most immediate thing is to answer the other part of your question. You had asked about House Bill 184. If you look at the budget, and I may stand corrected on this, but if you look at the budget that is currently sitting in the House awaiting an override vote, or the state budget, it assumes, I believe, that clear pricing is incorporated into the state budget. So that's why, Julie, the fiscal note on House Bill 184 shows, I think, $380 to $450 million of cost, somewhere around there. So the fact is if clear pricing doesn't go through, that's going to result in more cost. You know, we're an agent. We're a fiduciary. All we do is we manage the plan as efficiently as possible. But ultimately, the cost of the plan has to be borne by the legislature through the appropriation process and members or taxpayers like them, or from the hospital providers themselves. That's why we've been extremely generous with offering 100% over the Medicare reimbursement rates, and we continue to be boycotted. And the third thing, going back to that, Julie, is that we'll be awaiting the preliminary numbers from Blue Cross Blue Shield, which we should be expecting in the next 48 hours to determine what we do going forward.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Julie. Does anyone else have a question for Treasurer Folwell?
I've got one follow-up. This is Jason, North Carolina Public Radio. I wanted to see if you heard anything or got a note from anybody, perhaps the UNC Board Chair Charlie Owen, after the meeting you had with them yesterday.
Yeah, they sent us a letter and said they'd like to continue to work with us, but I don't have it in front of me, Jason, but I think it basically said they have no interest in reference-based pricing. And if you're not interested in, and I sort of didn't close the loop on this earlier, I hope some of the callers are still with us. Reference-based pricing is not the end. It's the beginning. We have said consistently from day one, we got to figure out what we're spending this money on. We got to make sure that we're abiding by the auditor's admonition that the plan is spending billions of dollars and we don't have access to vendor contracts and cannot verify that we're receiving the discount. That's phase one. Phase two is to quickly start working on bundles. And excuse my inelegance, but I just think of the body as carpentry, plumbing, and electrical. The only thing that we do bundles on currently is carpentry, which is basically knees and hips and rotator cuffs. And we don't even do enough of those. A bundle is basically where if you need a knee replacement, you pay one price, and that includes the Band-Aids, the titanium screws, the anesthesia, the physical therapy, even has a warranty on the knee. We have a real opportunity to lower cost and be clear about what a knee replacement is going to cost by doing more bundles. We've only done bundles in a couple of instances in the very few parts of the state, and it's only with carpentry. But there's opportunities to do bundles with electrical and plumbing. And that is a real way of giving the power to the consumer so they can determine where the best quality care is. So that's very important. And thirdly, we're going to start looking at alternative payment arrangements. You know, part of all that's been said over the last year is that we need to align the incentives. These are direct quotes from the association who's boycotting the state employee health plan. We need to align our incentives between our providers and our patients. I'm going to be 61 years old this year. I have never been to a doctor where I didn't think that doctor was aligned with what was in my best interest. The fact that we have to create another program to align something that I think most people in this state already thought was aligned, and that is that the doctor is going to do the best thing on behalf of the members, is interesting to me. But it's one, reference-based pricing so we can get a baseline to figure out what we're paying. Number two is bundles. Number three is alternative payment arrangements. You know, ultimately, we could get to full capitation. That's a terrible word to use when you're talking about anything related to healthcare. I don't know who designed that word. But what does full capitation mean? That's what we have already with over 145,000 of our state employees who are over the age of 65, who are on the United Healthcare Medicare Advantage product. We pay United Healthcare one price per month per member, and we're done. So reference-based pricing is not the end. It's just the beginning of making sure that we are not spending taxpayers' money, billions of dollars of it, for something that we don't understand the value and the cost of price of what we're getting. Thank you, Jason.
Go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah. Thank you all very much for joining us. I know that this has been an issue that many of you have tied into on behalf of your readers, listeners, and viewers. This is a serious matter. It's a serious matter not only across the state but also across the country. But our responsibility is to tell the truth and do the right thing, and that's exactly what we have been doing during the whole period of time. And we will continue to do that as keepers of the public purse on behalf of state employees and taxpayers like them who fund these plans.